In 1929, scholars in Istanbul made a discovery that should have rewritten history. Hidden in the old imperial palace, they found a map drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis. The map showed the coastline of South America with remarkable accuracy. It showed Africa. And it showed something else, a land mass at the bottom of the world, a coastline that wouldn't be officially discovered for another 300 years. But that's not the impossible part. The impossible part is what that coastline looks like. It appears to show Antarctica, without ice, the actual coast beneath the glaciers, coast that's been buried under 2 miles of ice for at least 6,000 years. How did a 16th century admiral draw a map of a continent no one knew existed? How did he show details that modern technology only confirmed in 1958? And where did he get his information? Piri Reis wrote the answer on the map itself. He said he used very ancient sources so old that they came from before the ice. This is the mystery of the Piri Reis map and the secret it may reveal about Antarctica. Before we examine the map, we need to understand who made it. Piri Reis was not a crackpot. He was not a fantasist. He was one of the most respected admirals and cartographers of his age. Born around 1470, Piri Reis, full name Haji Muhyiddin, Piri ibn Haji Mehmed, served in the Ottoman Navy for decades. He fought in numerous naval battles. He rose to command the Ottoman fleet in the Indian Ocean. He wrote the Kitab-ı-Bahriye, the Book of Navigation, one of the most important maritime documents of the 16th century. It contained detailed maps and sailing instructions for the Mediterranean. This was a man who knew maps, who made maps, who staked his reputation on accuracy. In 1513, he compiled a world map, drawing on multiple sources. He noted his sources on the map itself, 8 Ptolemaic maps, referring to maps in the tradition of the ancient Greek geographer Claudius Ptolemy. 4 Portuguese maps from the recent explorations of the Atlantic. 1 Arabic map. And, most intriguingly, a map made by Christopher Columbus himself. Piri Reis claimed to have obtained Columbus's map through his uncle, who had sailed with the Spanish. This matters because Columbus died in 1506, just 7 years before Piri Reis made his map. Some of Piri Reis's sources were cutting-edge contemporary, but others, he said, were very, very old. How old? That's where the mystery begins. Only a fragment of Piri Reis's world map survives, roughly 1/3 of the original. It shows the western coast of Africa, the eastern coast of South America, and various Atlantic islands. For a 1513 map, much of this is impressively accurate. The coast of Brazil, only discovered 13 years earlier, is rendered in remarkable detail. The Amazon River Delta is shown. Islands in the Atlantic are positioned with precision, but then there's the bottom of the map. Below South America, there's a landmass that extends eastward. Some researchers argue this is simply a distorted continuation of South America. Cartographic error was common in early maps. Others argue it's the eastern coast of South America folded around to fit the parchment. But others, and this is where it gets strange, argue it's something else entirely. In 1960, a professor of history named Charles Hapgood examined the Piri Reis map with his students. Hapgood was a respected academic, not a fringe theorist. He taught at Keene State College and had published mainstream historical work. He concluded that the landmass at the bottom of the map was Antarctica. Specifically, he claimed it showed Queen Maud Land, the part of Antarctica that faces the Atlantic, and he claimed it showed the coastline as it would look without the ice sheet. Hapgood sent his analysis to the US Air Force. In 1961, Lieutenant Colonel Harold Z. Ohlmeyer of the 8th Reconnaissance Technical Squadron wrote back, "The geographical detail shown in the lower part of the map agrees very remarkably with the results of the seismic profile made across the top of the ice cap by the Swedish-British Antarctic Expedition of 1949. This indicates the coastline had been mapped before it was covered by the ice cap." A US Air Force officer confirmed that the Piri Reis map appeared to show Antarctica without ice. Let that sink in. Here's why this is impossible. Antarctica was officially discovered in 1820, 307 years after Piri Reis drew his map. The coastline beneath the ice sheet wasn't mapped until the International Geophysical Year of 1957 to 58, using seismic surveys and modern technology. The ice sheet covering Antarctica is, in most places, over a mile thick. In some places, nearly 3 miles. It has covered the continent for millions of years. But wait, not millions of years everywhere. Recent research has complicated our understanding of Antarctic ice. Some scientists believe that parts of the Antarctic coastline may have been ice-free as recently as 6,000 years ago, during a warm period called the Holocene climatic optimum. Others push this back further, 12,000 years, to the end of the last ice age. Still others maintain that the ice has been stable for much longer. The science is not settled, but even if parts of Antarctica were ice-free 6,000 years ago, that's 4,000 years before the earliest known civilizations, 4,000 years before writing, 4,000 years before Sumeria, before Egypt, before anyone we know of could have made maps. So if Piri Reis accurately depicted an ice-free Antarctic coast, who made the original map he was copying? Piri Reis himself gives us a clue. In his notes on the map, he writes that some of his sources dated back to the time of Alexander the Great, the 4th century BC. He mentions the Library of Alexandria, the great repository of ancient knowledge that was destroyed over centuries. What if the Library of Alexandria contained maps from even earlier times? What if the Egyptians, the Phoenicians, or some unknown civilization had preserved geographical knowledge from before the flood? This is the theory Charles Hapgood proposed. He called it ancient sea kings, the idea that a sophisticated maritime civilization existed before recorded history, mapped the world, and passed their knowledge down through the ages. When the Ice Age ended, when sea levels rose, when coastlines changed, their knowledge became fragmented, copied, recopied, passed through Phoenician, Egyptian, Greek, and Arab hands.
What else is
until
buried?
Finally, fragments reached Piri Reis. Graham Hancock, in his book Fingerprints of the Gods, expanded this theory. He proposed that a lost civilization, perhaps the basis for the Atlantis legend, existed during the last ice age. They were advanced enough to navigate and map the world. They were destroyed by the cataclysms at the end of the ice age, floods, earthquakes, rising seas, but some of their knowledge survived, preserved in maps that were copied for millennia. Is this possible? The mainstream says no. There's no archaeological evidence for such a civilization, but the mainstream also struggles to explain the Piri Reis map. The mystery remains. Let's turn to Antarctica itself. What do we actually know about what lies beneath the ice? Modern radar and satellite technology have mapped the subglacial topography of Antarctica in detail. Beneath the ice there are mountain ranges, the Gamburtsev Mountains, taller than the Alps. There are vast subglacial lakes, Lake Vostok, buried under 2 miles of ice, containing water that hasn't seen sunlight in 15 million years. There are river systems, valleys. What might have been coastal plains? If Antarctica were ice-free, it would be a continent of mountains, forests, and rivers. A habitable continent. And there are anomalies. In 2012, satellite imagery revealed what some claim are pyramid-shaped structures in the Ellsworth Mountains. Are they natural formations? Probably. Mountains can be pyramid-shaped, but they sparked intense speculation. In 2016, NASA reported a massive anomaly beneath the ice of Wilkes Land, possibly a 300-kilometer-wide crater from an ancient asteroid impact, or possibly something else. Antarctica is the least explored continent on Earth. Only about 1% of its surface is ice-free at any time. Scientific stations are clustered in a few locations. Vast areas have never been examined closely. What else might be buried there? We don't know, and some people argue we're not meant to know. Antarctica is governed by the Antarctic Treaty of 1959. Officially, the treaty exists to preserve the continent for scientific research and prevent military activity. 12 nations originally signed. Today, 54 countries are signatories. Under the treaty, no one can claim territorial sovereignty. No one can exploit resources. Access is regulated, but some ask why. Why is the most remote continent on Earth so carefully controlled? Why are independent expeditions discouraged? What don't they want us to find? This is where we enter speculation. Some claim that governments discovered something in Antarctica, evidence of a pre-ice civilization, and have covered it up. Some point to the Nazi expeditions of 1938-39. When Germany sent ships to Queen Maud Land and claimed territory they called New Swabia. Some point to Operation High Jump in 1947, a massive US naval expedition to Antarctica led by Admiral Byrd. Officially, it was for research and training. Conspiracy theorists claim it was a military operation against something. We have no proof of any of this. What we have is a map that shouldn't exist, a continent buried under ice, and questions that mainstream science struggles to answer. That's not proof of anything, but it's enough to make us wonder. In fairness, we should examine what mainstream scholars say about the Piri Reis map, and they have responses. First, the Antarctica on the map may not be Antarctica at all. Some cartographic historians argue it's simply a distorted representation of South America's southern coast, bent eastward to fit the available space. Early mapmakers often compressed or distorted coastlines when they ran out of room. Second, the accuracy may be overstated. When you compare the Piri Reis map to actual Antarctic coastlines, the match is not perfect. You have to rotate, scale, and adjust the map to make it fit. Critics argue that Hapgood and his followers cherry-picked data. Third, the ancient sources may not be that ancient. Piri Reis mentioned sources from Alexander's time, but that's still the 4th century BC, well within recorded history. He may have been exaggerating or mistaken about the age of his sources. These are valid points. But they don't fully explain the map either. They don't explain the specific details that seem to match the subglacial coastline. They don't explain where Piri Reis got information about lands that Europeans hadn't explored. They don't explain the US Air Force officer's letter. The skeptics have arguments, but so do the believers. And until someone definitively solves the Piri Reis mystery, both sides will continue to disagree. In 1513, an Ottoman admiral sat down to make a map of the world. He used the best sources available: Portuguese charts, Arabic maps, ancient documents passed down through centuries. He drew coastlines that shouldn't have been known. He depicted a continent that wouldn't be discovered for 300 more years. And he may have shown us something that's been buried under ice for thousands of years. The Piri Reis map asks us a simple question. What if we don't know our own history? What if civilizations rose and fell before writing existed to record them? What if knowledge we think is modern was actually rediscovered, retrieved from fragments of a forgotten age? Antarctica holds its secrets beneath miles of ice. The Piri Reis map holds its secrets in faded ink on gazelle skin. Somewhere between them lies a truth we haven't fully grasped. Maybe we never will. Or maybe the ice will melt, and we'll finally see what's been hidden all along. Until then, the map remains. Impossible, unexplained, waiting. A message from the past that we still can't fully read. If this mystery gripped you, subscribe. There are more forbidden maps, more buried secrets, more history that doesn't fit the official story. See you in the next one.